Hello and welcome to What Remains. My name's Pete, and in this episode we're going to be discovering what actually happened to the old railways. The Victorians built us around 20,000 miles of railway. Later on in their lives it was decided that all these railways were expensive, they weren't cost effective, and they weren't making any money, so they needed a strategy in place to try and save money, and this came in the form of Dr. Beeching. He wanted to close around 3/4 of the railways. He never got his hands on 3/4 as much as he tried. But what happened to all the lands and the railways that were closed? That is what we're going to explore. I am now on a railway that was built by the Victorians. I'm next to what was Copley Sheds in Leeds, and this is what's called the Wly Curve. Whilst it wasn't closed under Dr. Beeching, it was initially built by the Victorians, but I needed to come down here to show you something. Initially, when a railway is closed down, it's offered to previous landowners and councils to buy. The metals are normally taken up, the sleepers and all the supporting infrastructure. Buildings are either demolished, as they are behind me, and sold off. That's now an industrial estate. It was Copley Sheds. This railway I'm on is quite unique. It closed down much later. I think it was the early 2000s, something like that. I forget now exactly the date. But it wasn't officially disused. It was disconnected from the line. So there are some things here for us to see, what you wouldn't normally see on a disused railway. Some structures are left in place. This bridge is a public footpath, and it is huge. It still goes over a live railway line at that end, but here there must have been another 4 lines going into the yards, and where I'm stood there was 2 lines avoiding Leeds, so you could get a direct line to Bradford. As I said, the metals are normally taken up, but on this one here we've still got the rails in place. There are no shoes there. I've walked this railway line. It's called the Wly Curve, and I've made a video on it if you want to go back and look that one up. Once the railways had been closed by Dr. Beeching and all the saleable assets were sold off, all the lines taken up and scrapped, it didn't work. British Railways still had a huge deficit. But that still left lots and lots, hundreds of miles of railway disused. So what happened to them? Who owns them? And what did they do with them all? I don't have the answer to all those questions, but I can put some answers to some of those questions. Some of the railways were just left, and they became footpaths and walkways and cycle paths, and more are being opened up at this moment, cycle paths. This is what I'm on, the track bed of what was once the Aoocci branch line, which came from Poling Wharfdale that way to Aoocci that way. Now, with all the metals taken up and the sleepers, that would leave viaducts, bridges, tunnels. Many were left in situ, and some are used today. Some are even listed buildings. Many were demolished or filled in. Now, what you're looking at in front of me today is what's left of the Aoocci tunnel, railway tunnel. It was demolished I believe it was filled in, and I was also informed that there was a parapet wall up there still, but I can't find it. I was really hoping to see that. That'd have been quite special, but I have got a photograph of what this tunnel used to look like. What you can see behind me is now a busy road and roundabout, and that was the Oley Railway Tunnel, which went into a cutting up to Oley Station. Oley track bed from the branch line is now a road, and I'm going to take you up to show you what remains of Oley Station. I've stayed on the Oley line because it serves the purpose of what I'm doing today. I think it was closed by Beeching, this one, I'm not sure, I have to research this line. I do plan on walking it from start to finish, hopefully fairly shortly. But behind me is where the railway station was. This has been knocked down. The track bed is where that road more or less is, and where this bridge is. There was originally a footbridge here that went over the railway line because the station yard took up a fair bit of space, and now where that road is used to be the railway, more or less built on. And the railway did have a footbridge here, and that's called Station Road. Now I've been just informed by a local lady that these buildings here were used by the railway workers, so that is the only thing left of the buildings. We've got original gate posts, but this was never sold off, it was demolished, and I got told by the local lady it was demolished in about 1971, 1972. But they forgot to take away the weighbridge. I did know this was here, and I'm finally come to see it, and I'm glad I've seen it. And it does say on there, it says 1932 to weigh 20 tonnes, H. Poole & Sons, Birmingham, London, and its bridge weigh scales 524. So while dismantling the railways led to the destruction of many of them, as we've seen, there had been a road built on. This one got knocked down and turned into a public bridleway, public footpath. Bridges and tunnels have been destroyed. Many have been saved, many are opened as cycleways now, and some are preserved as listed buildings. But what about modern railways? Who owns them? Well, again, the one that we were on earlier, the Wly Curve, was auctioned off. It was up for auction with pews for around £15,000, but it was actually sold for £45,000 by Network Rail. I mean, bought by Network Rail for £45,000. Because these railways, not all of them end up like this. Some are lucky enough to be heritage railways. Some of them get started up as heritage railways. Sadly, this one never will, because the track bed's gone. And this village now of Oley is pretty big, and this went to Bradford and Leeds amongst other places. It would be a very useful line in the modern day, but there was no provisions made should this day ever arise when they want us out of our cars, back on public transport, forcing you to go to electric cars with limited miles, giving you range anxiety so you don't go anywhere. So when British Rail couldn't sell all the land, it went to the Burdensome estate. Again, British Rail was owned by the government. These lands are owned by the government or your local councils. This body was abolished in 2013, and then it was the Highways Agency that took over these places. And it is the Highways Agency that monitors bridges now in the Department of Transport, the ones that are still in use. Some they don't want to take responsibility for, neither do the landowners. That's why you get railway tunnels like the Burdale Railway Tunnel. It's a danger to human life. It's not being filled in, it's not cared for, it's not maintained, and you can access it, you can go in it. It's collapsing, and it collapses regularly. There are a number of collapses inside that railway tunnel now. I know, I've been. So there is a charity called the National Cycle Network who are now buying up and maintaining these railways. That allows folks like me and you to go on them and walk on them. However, some were just used as footpaths, and because they've been used as footpaths for over 20 years, they now become public footpaths and a public right of way. I hope that this has answered some questions. It wasn't going to answer every question, and it's not going to be 100% with all railways. Please share your knowledge of this in the comments, and I really would like you to subscribe to the channel. In many cases where the railways were not sold off or redeveloped, nature takes over, and that is what is happening here. Where the land is left undeveloped, nature slowly takes over and reclaims the land. Over time, the embankments, cuttings and bridges may become overgrown with vegetation, with some sections of track still visible in remote areas. Now, as we can see here, we've still got an old signal post, and we can see how nature is without a doubt coming back and reclaiming this. I hope you've enjoyed watching this episode. If you have, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out to let me know that you like this sort of content, and please take care.